Are there valid non-religious arguments against abortion? Find out my views coming up next. You know, I've seen this pop up a lot recently. I even saw part of a live stream between Hunter Avallone and Jacqueline Glenn where they talked about it. But I'm not convinced. In fact, I am more and more unconvinced by these pleas than ever before. I'm sure everyone understands that I entirely ignore religious arguments against abortion. I don't care what you think your imaginary friend wants or what appears in an ancient book of mythology. Those are all irrational, entirely emotional arguments that tend to fall apart entirely under even the most cursory of critical evaluation. But you know something? I went looking for non-religious arguments against abortion, and those really don't fare any better. I have yet to come up with anything that is not wholly emotional and completely lacking in any kind of critical thought whatsoever. So my question is there any such thing as a valid, non-emotional, entirely intellectual argument against abortion in the real world? Because I'm really getting to the point where I think such a thing simply doesn't exist. So let's take a look at two common arguments to see where they fail. First, I mentioned Hunter Avallone's live stream on YouTube, which I'll link in the description. He was arguing against abortion while Jacqueline Glenn was arguing sort of for it, I guess. I don't know. Keep in mind, I only saw a couple of minutes of the live stream because I'm really not a live stream guy and I generally don't bother watching them, but I just so happened to click through while they were on this subject. Now, I like Hunter, I've said that in the past, but he and many other conservatives, both religious and non-religious, tend to go with emotional arguments rather than setting aside their own feelings and evaluating the situation based on the facts. He was saying that a fetus inherently has worth, that there is a value to all of humanity, and that we need to treat humans better just because they're humans. And I don't buy that. Now, you're welcome to your feelings, of course. You can want whatever you want. You can feel whatever you feel. But you have to realize that your wishes and dreams do not necessarily translate to reality. You might personally value every single human being on this planet just because they have human DNA, but I don't, and neither does the world at large. And they shouldn't, at least in my opinion. Sure, you have to have a certain amount of respect for the people you encounter. You have to be willing to help people who deserve that help. But the idea that everyone is equally worthwhile, that's simply not true. I mean, how about Jeffrey Dahmer? How about Hitler? Are they worth just as much as everyone else? Because I certainly don't think so. If I had run into either of them at the height of their evil, I'd personally have put a bullet in their heads, no second thoughts about it. And I suspect that the same is true of most people, whether they'd admit it in public or not. Clearly, not everyone is worthy of equal value or equal respect. Of course, that's a very subjective thing, but we don't live in a subjective world. Everything is a trade-off. We have to make intelligent decisions based on the information and resources we actually have to make a society that operates as best it can. We have to evaluate reality based on the facts, not on our feelings. And unfortunately, far too few actually do that. Then there are the people who simply declare that everyone has a right to life. There's a group out there called Secular Pro-Life that uses this argument, but it simply doesn't stand up to any scrutiny. I mean, right to life, well, everybody dies. So apparently, nobody has a right to be alive. Rights don't just magically exist out there in the ether. They are granted by society, by people, not by nature or gods or anything like that. It's no surprise that a lot of people who push this view are libertarians, people who really have no clue what rights actually are in the first place. But this isn't workable either, because as I said, the only demonstrable source of rights we have are ourselves. And so long as abortion is legal, society has made its determination that fetuses are simply worth less than born people, and that they lack the universal right to life. Society can certainly change its mind, but at the moment, declaring that fetuses have a right to be born is simple nonsense. They claim that fetuses are human and thus have certain rights. This is not the case. Yes, certainly a fetus has human DNA. It is absolutely a person and can, if allowed to, be born and grown into an adult member of society. So what? That doesn't automatically give it rights just because the adherent emotionally wants it to have them. And that seems to be the entire reason most people who follow this line of reasoning do so. A fetus must have rights because it makes us feel good to think that it does. Sorry, your emotional state does not affect how things operate in reality, no matter how much you wish it did. No, my argument for the legalization of abortion is purely practical. There is zero emotion involved. But before I explore that, I want to say that this is a purely pragmatic approach. Given my own personal preference, I'd rather people never needed or wanted an abortion. I wish that every child born was a child that was wanted by two parents who loved it. I wish people were responsible and unwanted pregnancies simply never happened. But that's not how things work in the real world, and as I keep saying, you have to deal with the world as it is, not as you wish it was. Therefore, there simply is no case that you can make against the need for abortion, because most people are stupid and irresponsible. As much as I wish that wasn't the case, it is. More people are stupid, gullible, hedonistic, irrational fools who stumble through life without a clue or a plan. That is why religion is still so prevalent, and whether people like it or not, why the far left gets any converts at all. People are selfish, looking out for their own desires, whether they have any means of paying for them or not. They often figure that a solution will present itself somewhere down the road, so don't worry about it and just have fun now. This is not a valid or worthwhile way to live one's life. They don't look at the bigger picture. They don't understand that their actions, or inactions as the case may be, might have a larger impact on society as a whole. That's why you get people voting for freebies from the government, not caring how these things are going to get paid for, because they only care about themselves and their own personal comfort. In fact, that's why you see so many people voting for free stuff for themselves. Free healthcare, free college educations, free everything. Benjamin Franklin had it right when he said, when the people find out that they can vote themselves money, that will herald the end of the republic. Welcome to the end of the republic, because that's exactly what people are doing. They aren't at all concerned with how this stuff will get funded. They figure it's somebody else's job to pay the taxes and make the sacrifices and pay the bills. I'm sorry, but the economy doesn't work that way. It never has, and it never will work that way. Nobody gets a free ride. And the same goes for social issues. Making changes to society for no good reason can have long-lasting, devastating effects on society as a whole. Of course, and this is mostly the political left here, they don't care. It's all about their precious fee-fees and not about an intelligent evaluation of how social interaction actually works. Anytime someone isn't happy, anytime someone isn't getting catered to and ridden around on society's collective shoulders, these people come out of the woodwork to demand justice. It's like they think they're Batman or something. Certainly, there are people who are legitimately being oppressed and harmed in society, and those people we do need to help based on the legitimacy of their claims. But when you're talking about 940 genders and the oppression Olympics of the far left, these people aren't being harmed. There is something seriously wrong with the cognitive portions of their brains. They need help. Mental help. But getting back to abortion, we really need to ask ourselves what is best for society and the future. Because pragmatically, a lot of the people who are out looking for abortions are not people who should actually be parents. They're not interested in raising children to be productive members of society. In fact, A lot of them will just produce more leeches on society, just like they are. And I totally do not buy the idea that breeding is a human right. It's a human ability. It's a biological drive. But we as humans have the intellectual ability to override our genetic predispositions. We are capable of deciding not to do things that our biological programming tells us that we should do, and to decide to do things that our programming says that we shouldn't. We are not mindless animals driven by instinct, incapable of making our own choices. But as I said, there is reality and there is wishful thinking. People ought to make responsible choices. People ought to say, I can't afford to have this child, and not have it. People ought to recognize that actions have potential consequences and refrain from doing things with possible bad outcomes. People need to be able to engage in risk management, and unfortunately, we know that they don't. We all know that they don't. That doesn't mean that the world magically changes so that the stupid and irresponsible suddenly become intelligent and responsible. We still live in the real world, a world where bad actors can and do cause damage to us all. We need to recognize this and allow procedures to mitigate that potential harm to our social structure. Whether you like it or not, there are a lot of people who currently breed who shouldn't, who have no interest in raising intelligent, educated children who will go on to be a benefit to society as a whole. And a lot of people who get abortions, those are people who I would argue probably fall into that camp. These are people who have no business, at least in my opinion, being anywhere around impressionable little minds. And it isn't like you can just adopt them all out. There aren't nearly enough adoptive homes for the unwanted children we already have, much less the children that would be produced by eliminating abortion. Many children spend their entire childhood in foster care. Where do you think you're going to get the average 650,000 adoptive homes to care for all of the unwanted children currently eliminated by abortion every single year? I mean, sure, it's an unpleasant thought, but life isn't fair, and we have to deal with a sometimes unpleasant reality. It's a completely pragmatic solution for a problem that we have no way, at least at present, of solving. We can't pretend things that just aren't true. We can't pretend that people are going to suddenly start being responsible, that they're going to suddenly start making good decisions, or that they're going to magically care about more than just themselves. Wishes and dreams don't make reality happen. Neither do feelings. We can only deal with this by examining the facts. And the fact is, nearly 20% of every pregnancy in America ends in abortion. Nationwide, the average is 186 abortions per 1,000 live births. This is not going to go away just because you want it to. But I'd honestly like to hear your solution to this problem, because at the moment, I don't see any other than maintaining the status quo. You can't just wish your way to victory. You have to have a plan that works in the real world. And unfortunately, I haven't seen any, have you? And if you haven't seen any, maybe you ought to question whether there actually are any. All of the emotional appeals aren't working. All of the empty claims about rights don't make a difference. All of the philosophical mumbo-jumbo that gets thrown around don't make people any more intelligent or rational or responsible. It doesn't change the fact that we're just animals. We're not special to anyone but ourselves. That's reality for you, whether you like it or not. So again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Keep your emotions out of it. Keep your philosophical ideologies out of it. Let me know real world solutions, not pie in the sky beliefs, because I really don't think they exist in any way that can maintain any kind of freedom. It's pretty sad, but I also think it's pretty true.